Welcome, dear friend. Tonight, I invite you to set aside your cares, to close your eyes, or gaze softly at the gentle glow of your screen. Allow your body to sink into your bed. Feel the fabric beneath you, the subtle weight of your limbs. Take a slow, easy breath, in and out. In this quiet moment, we're stepping into another world, an ancient medieval monastery, where silence was far more than absence of noise. It was a disciplined art, a living pact between body, mind, and spirit. Over the next hours, in a gentle and serene tone, we'll unfold the tapestry of monastic silence, its rules, its secret sign languages, and the tender exceptions that glowed like small candles in a vast chapel of quiet. This isn't a fast journey, but a drawn-out meditation through old stones and humble cloisters, through footsteps echoed in corridors and whispered glances across candlelit shadows. Tonight, you are not an outsider. You are a traveler in slippers, your cloak soft around your shoulders. You move slowly past the scriptorium, where monks lean over candles and parchment. Their quills trace careful letters, each stroke slow and deliberate. No rattle, no haste. Silence isn't emptiness. It is full. It is the gentle hum of reverence in each breath, even when no word is spoken. As the ambient bells toll softly in the background, we'll meet the earliest orders: Benedictines, Cistercians, Carthusians. Each shape their own rules around silence. We'll trace the echo of those rules through cold stones, small doorways, into humble refectories, over the clink of metal bowls. And as your thoughts begin to drift toward sleep, I'll guide you deeper, not with drama or haste, but with the patient unfolding of centuries-old practices. Feel free to let yourself sink further. Notice the beat of your heart, quiet but steady. Notice how stillness can speak more than any spoken prayer. Let's begin. Imagine the monastery gate closing behind you, its wooden bars sliding into place. You step into shadow. Night's still air folds around you. The lamp-lit path leads onward. And in that hush, the story begins. Imagine, if you will, entering a medieval monastery at dawn. The air is cool, hushed, and the stones beneath your feet carry the gentle echo of centuries. Within these ancient walls, silence is neither empty nor oppressive. It is alive, a living companion to every breath, every footstep. In this sacred hush, monks follow a rhythm that balances prayer, work, and communal life, guided by the rule of Saint Benedict. Written in the early 6th century for his monastery at Monte Cassino, this rule shapes each moment of daily life. Its aim neither extreme austerity nor easefully casual comfort, but a deliberate space for peace, labor, and contemplation. The rule draws its heart in chapter 6, which calls for taciturnitas, a restraint of speech. This is not total suppression, but a gentle shaping of words, presence, and silence together. Speech is allowed when it is necessary and proportionate, but idle chatter, gossip, or loudness find no home here. The intention is plain: to keep the heart unburdened, the mind clear, the community free from unnecessary distraction. Over time, monastic thinkers describe silence as the mother of chastity, as necessary for purity, not just of body, but of mind and spirit. It was modesty, humility, interior attentiveness qualities nurtured by silence. In this cool, dim world, words are measured and few. In daily life, silence flows through spaces: the cloister, the refectory, chapel, dormitory. In the cloister, monks walk beside each other in silence. their robes whispering along the stones. Here, the soft scraping of sandals becomes almost rhythmic a walking prayer. In the refectory, they sit shoulder to shoulder at long wooden tables. No voices rise. Instead, a reader recites sacred texts aloud, and the monks listen, chew, sip their drink. Only then, if a need arises, does a simple sign break the quiet. A hand raised, a finger pressed to lips, a nod. Those little gestures carry worlds of meaning. Across medieval Europe, Portugal, England, Germany, monastic sign lexicons flourished from the 10th century on. These are not elaborate grammars, but symbolic catalogs, signs for water, food, candle, priest, even the abbot. One gesture might mimic striking a bell to ask for the deacon. Another might draw a cross over the chest to request a mass book. A variant across Cistercian or Benedictine communities, each gesture is simple and iconic, practical yet graceful. Picture this: a monk at the inkwell, pen held trembling in candlelight. He needs more ink. He raises his quill, taps his wrist, no word. Another monk glides up with ink. The first gestures gently, the second refills the vessel. That is all that's exchanged. It passes as quietly as breath, yet the purpose is fully fulfilled. This is not deprivation, but a deeper form of attention. The world becomes more vibrant within quiet. In chapter 38 of the Rule of Saint Benedict, gestures at meals are mandated when speech would break the abiding silence. You might see a monk motioning with cupped hands to ask for salt, or forming a small blessing sign to request a drink of water. Each gesture is carried out with courteous dignity. In other words, movement took the place of speech, an atmosphere of reverence, not deprivation. It all works together like the parts of an instrument, each silent until it is time to sound. Silence also governs the time known as the Great Silence, when the monastery passes into nighttime hush. After Compline, the final office of the day, no one speaks until after prime the next morning. This sacred interlude offers body and mind the gift of uninterrupted rest. Though Benedict did not require absolute silence, this nightly stillness becomes a shared anchor, a communal pause in which the whole monastery breathes and sleeps together. There is compassion in these rules. The infirm, for example, are granted speech when needed. Novices, still learning the ways of the cloister, receive gentle guidance by word until they become accustomed to sign. This is not harsh severity, but a measured kindness. Silence is a path to humility, but it is always held in tune with mercy. Deep yet, silence becomes a spiritual discipline, a way to listen, to pray, to be present. In the Benedictine tradition, silence clears the inner path so that one might hear more readily the voice of God, or perhaps the deeper voice within. It frees each of the 8 canonical hours matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, Compline to become zones of stillness and devotion, woven through with quiet labor, study, and community. Sign languages within monasteries, such as those developed by Benedictines and Cistercians, often include nouns and brief verbs. Eat, sit, stand, confess. They are motivated by iconography. Gestures resemble what they represent. While there is no full grammar, they are woven into Latin or the vernacular word order, forming brief, intentional exchanges. In some Carthusian or Cistercian settings, these sign systems were documented in lexicons, as though they were precious relics, preserving both necessity and sacred elegance in quiet communication. These gestures grow into rituals. For instance, A monk might cup both hands under another's bowl to quietly pass food. Or in the chapel, turning pages of chant books is done with soft fingering. No ripping sound, each movement a kind of reverent choreography. Even the passing of food or sharing of water is a carefully arranged ballet of hands and eyes, all underpinned by shared silence. In the scriptoria, where manuscripts are copied, silence is as vital as the light. The soft rasp of quill on parchment, the low curve of Latin letters being traced, the pause before dipping into ink, these are actions imbued with contemplative calm. Outsiders might imagine monastic life as stern and joyless, but here, silence cultivates a gentle joy. Each monk is deeply present, each breath and quill stroke offering mindfulness, almost prayer. Beyond the Benedictine order, later movements took silence further. In the 11th-12th centuries, Cistercians and Carthusians sought a more ascetic embrace of stillness, though this is covered in later chapters. Here, in the Benedictine foundations, we see the shape of devotion that values neither extreme asceticism nor indulgent chatter, but a measured, humble balance. Finally, it's essential to remember silence was not the antithesis of community. It was the soil in which community roots grew deeper. In silence, monks learned to listen deeply, not just to prayer, but to each other. The soft sigh of a brother's breath at night, the gentle placement of a book, the solemn drop of a candle all create a tapestry of shared quiet. Words are sometimes unnecessary when the heart is already speaking. As you settle into your bed, let the story of these silent beginnings form a gentle rhythm in your mind. Feel the way silence can be soft, supportive like a warm blanket that carries you toward rest. Each breath you take becomes a monastery's hush, each pause in your thoughts a step along cloistered corridors. This foundation is not distant history. It is a living invitation to cultivate stillness tonight. In the centuries following the earliest Benedictine communities, the practice of monastic silence matured like a slow-blooming flower. The Cistercian reform of 1098 embraced the Benedictine spirit, but deepened its commitment to quiet and outward stillness designed to nurture an inner calm. Though they did not take a literal vow of silence, Cistercian monks embraced silence as a foundational element of their lives. They believed it was a path of liberation and union with God, a way to guard against the sins of the tongue and to invite contemplative meditation. The Cistercians stood apart from their Cluniac predecessors through their simplicity of life. They sought a harmonious balance between prayer and manual labor under the natural order of ora et labora. Their humility manifested in architecture, meals, liturgy, and most importantly, in speech. Even during work, only necessary words were spoken, and then with grave intention. Meals, in particular, became a classroom of silence as monks sat in ordered rows, facing one direction, communicating only through gestures, while listening to readings aloud texts that floated over the quiet like a gentle stream. From this grew a rich tradition of monastic sign languages. Simple gestures pointing, cupping the hand, laying a finger to the lips served as an unspoken vocabulary for daily needs. These lexicons existed across Benedictine, Cistercian, and Trappist communities, each with their own set of signs for water, bread, tasks, and movement. Though limited in scope, rarely more than a couple hundred gestures, they offered an elegant, graceful alternative to speech. By the 12th century, ascetic reformers sought still deeper silence. The Carthusians, founded by Bruno of Cologne in 1084, cultivated a life that blended hermetic solitude with communal prayer. Each Carthusian monk lived in his own simple cell, preferring to spend most of each day in silence, save for the gathering in church for matins, mass, and vespers. Their houses formed a silent grid of cells, linked only by narrow corridors, enough for occasional passage, but not for conversation. Talk was rare and spoke only to essential matters, always brief, quiet, and respectful. In those cells, time stretched. The walls absorbed every breath, every step, allowing the monk to sense even his own heartbeat. Silence was not absence. It was a living presence. Each cell was conceived as an eremitage, a private sanctuary, where the monk could listen to the word of God and to his own interior silence. The solitude was both a gift and challenge, inviting deep attentiveness and spiritual repose. Mondays brought the weekly spascimentum, a 4-hour walk in pairs or small groups. The only time for speech in their otherwise silent world, the spascimentum gave space for light conversation. Pairs changed every half hour, allowing each monk to exchange simple words with several companions. This temporary break in silence served as nourishment for both body and soul within the ascetic rhythm. At night, another practice deepened the stillness. All speech ceased after the evening office, until after the morning meal. Known as the Great Silence, this sacred hush stretched from Compline through the hours of darkness into dawn, enfolding the monks in unspoken vigil. It was a time of rest and awareness, where the only sounds were footsteps, breathing, perhaps the soft shift of fabric on wooden benches. Over time, new orders embraced similar philosophies. In the 17th century, the Trappists, also known as the Cistercians of the Strict Observance, revived the austere essence of silence, work, and enclosure under the leadership of Armand Jean Laboutier de Reims. Their reforms reintroduced rigorous manual labor, voluntary poverty, and the deliberate restraint of speech. Again, sign languages were used during work and meals, with speech allowed only when essential and brief. These diverse expressions of silence, the Benedictine restraint, the Cistercian simplicity, the Carthusian solitude, the Trappist rigor belong on a continuum rather than with absolute boundaries. Benedictine rules encouraged taciturnity and reserved speech for necessity and prayer. The Cistercians elevated quiet to a contemplative ideal without prescribing full silence. Carthusians embraced solitude as sanctuary, and Trappists deliberately rekindled austere silence as spiritual discipline. Within each tradition, exceptions brought warmth. Novices received gentle instruction from an abbot or father, whispered to guide, to nurture, to show mercy within the stillness. The infirm received words of comfort and small gestures of care. Silence, though sacred, was never cruel, it was always metered by compassion. A novice entering a Carthusian charter house experienced that hush first in the stairwell, a long spiral stone stair leading to his cell. Each tiny echo of a footfall taught restraint. Then, within the cell, the monk would learn to speak only with the permission of the prior, and even then, only briefly. Statutes spoke of respectful brevity. Those who speak, let them do so briefly. Over time, the burden of silence would lift, replaced by an inexpressible light that drew them into deeper quiet. Likewise, in Trappist refectories, silence prevailed until after the evening bell. While the reading was heard, servants passed out food, a gesture rather than speech, and if someone needed water, a subtle hand gesture sufficed. This delicate choreography created a tapestry of quiet grace. All across medieval Europe, from the ruins of Habaduya in Norway to the great abbeys of France and England, monks lived out the rule in ways both communal and solitary. At Hesychia, Cistercian monks cultivated disciplined silence at meals. Seated in single file, their thoughts turned inward as they heard readings instead of each other's voices. In the scriptorium, a finger pointed, a quill passed, and tasks were shared by gesture. Even the writing itself, ink flowing onto parchment, became a wordless devotion. These sign systems endured. Monastic lexicons from the Cluniac houses of the 11th century described dozens of signs. Texts of Benedictine communities from England record finger alphabets used by Bonaventure and others. By the late medieval period, entire vocabularies, perhaps 150 to 200 signs, enabled monks in various orders to communicate across walls of silence. Though medieval monks did not take permanent vows of silence, their practices created veritable cultures of quiet. The vow lay in fidelity to the rule and to interior peace, even as words were reserved for prayer or necessity. A 21st century Reddit reflection echoes, "The concept is a misunderstanding. There was never a rule which required perpetual silence. Yet the rhythm of silence, woven through their day, the hours, the meals, the offices, the walks, provided a living vow, slow and enduring. Over time, silence became more than empty space, it became fullness. Each quiet moment, each humble, meaningful gesture, was a thread in a living tapestry. Solitude balanced by weekly companionship. Words offered in confession or service, prayer or instruction. Signs passing need without breaking quiet. Silence became prayer. As centuries passed and monastic orders adapted to the world beyond their walls, the tradition of silence evolved, but did not vanish. Cistercians planted foundations overseas, and modern sign lexicons endure among contemplative communities around the world. Carthusians remain devoted to the solitude of their cells, even while modern life surrounds them. Perhaps the most poignant legacy of these orders lies less in rules and more in atmosphere. A hush that invites attention, intention, hospitality, care. A world where words are weighed, gestures chosen. A world where silence meant solidarity, not isolation. So tonight, as you breathe in quiet vulnerability, know that centuries of monks lived this way. Mindful of each breath, each movement, each gesture. They labored, they prayed, they rested all in silence. And into that stillness, they found serenity. In our quiet hour together, you too are invited not just to hear, but to dwell in quietude. May the traditions of monastic orders, Benedictine, Cistercian, Carthusian, Trappist offer gentle guidance. Speak only when necessary, gesture lightly with kindness, rest in solitude without loneliness. Let that ancient calm, born in stone cloisters and silent hallways, settle gently upon you. The first stirrings of the day within a medieval monastery emerge not with bustling voices, but with a subtle awareness of movement and purpose. As dawn approaches, the monastery's world is shaped by the canonical hours matins, lauds, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, and compline, each a quiet beat in the rhythm of monastic life. Long before the light of morning spills over the cloister, the night watch begins, rooted in a profound commitment. Monks rise in silence, their feet meeting cold stone floors, their breathing the only accompaniment. In the pre-dawn darkness, the service of matins unfolds. In Benedict's rule, he describes the night office as beginning around 2 hour of the night and lasting until dawn, though shorter in summer to allow for lauds at daybreak. The chapel is lit only by minimal candlelight, The shadows faint, shapes of columns gliding in the half-light. The monks gather silently, as though conjured by the mere gravity of their communal purpose. Their psalms sound as low echoes, measured and hushed, each word absorbed into the tall spaces, each response passed along without fanfare. In this silence, there is a blessing and a tension. A blessing because no word is wasted, no voice raised for anything less than prayer. A tension because every slight noise stands out footfalls, the decay of candle wax, a page turned. The first nocturne of Matins, 6 psalms, flows into the gentle rustle of a passage from the scriptures or a reading from the fathers of the church, recited softly. Even the most careful breaths seem amplified in that stillness. On Sundays and feasts, Matins extends with a third nocturne, the readings expanding into 4. Stillness deepens the spiritual atmosphere. Each word is a drop in a silent pool, rippling very slowly. When daylight begins to pale the darkness, lauds follow almost seamlessly. Before the first cock crows, before dawn breaks fully, a subtle toll signals the end of the night office, and the monks transition into morning praise. The atmosphere remains hushed. The rising sun's light makes no sudden impact. It filters in through narrow windows, illuminating the arched shapes, the chants' gentle rise and fall in the minimal light. After lauds, the brief rest returns. A few hours to sleep, to breathe, leaning into the sense of quiet that lingers even in slumber. When the first candlelight around the dormitory wakes them, each monk washes and dresses in silence, and in their habit, each motion smooth, practiced. They begin to gather again for prime, the first hour of daylight around 6 a.m. That service is shorter, sharper in timing, yet still cocooned in a deep respect for quiet. Words are few, prayers contained. The leftover candle's faint glow meets a newer flame. Directly after prime comes the chapter meeting, a communal gathering where the abbot and monks convene to receive daily counsel, instructions, and any necessary corrections. Again, silence shapes the tone. The abbot speaks not with rhetoric, but with mild, measured guidance. The monks listen, bowed in attentive inwardness, focusing not on personalities, but on the spiritual quality of the words. Speech is neither abrupt nor lavish. It is necessary and intentional, meeting Benedict's admonition to not speak until spoken to, and speak simply and modestly. The hands of the clock turn toward mid-morning. The hour of terce comes at the third hour around 9 a.m., followed by sext at noon and none. At around 3 p.m., each hour is a return to prayer, to recollection, a quiet anchor in the day's unfolding work. In the fields or scriptorium, silence continues as a rule. When the bell rings for sext before midday, monks cease work, no matter how delicate the task, and proceed in a hushed procession to the chapel. The vast quiet seems to absorb them, drawing them inward. Bells toll not urgently, but with calm intonation calling, reminding. During sext and none, readings continue, often from the Psalter or lessons, according to the liturgical calendar. The readings are short, the psalms often chanted. There is a gentle pattern. Chant, pause, chant, pause. Each breath falls between words. No applause, no echo of voices, only the resonance in stone and spirit. If the abbot teaches or corrects, he does so softly, conveying meaning in a decisively gentle tone always, mindful of Benedict's rule to limit words to those moved by divine grace and to end speech at a sign. At noon, after sext, the community shares its first meal. Even here, silence holds sway. Food is received via sign gestures to request water, bread, or the like, and conversation is absent. A low voice may read aloud. Spiritual texts are holy scripture, chosen to nourish the mind while the body is nourished. The rule instructs that reading aloud during meals is to continue, and silence after compline is strictly observed. Plates are set, soup ladled, water poured, all without a single spoken word. Words would distract from contemplation. Instead, the reader's voice cooperates in breaking silence only for edification, not social or idle exchange. After lunch, a period of repose returns. Work ends, rest begins. In some abbeys, this might take the form of quiet manual crafts. In others, study or private prayer within cells. The air resonates with subdued sounds. Parchment on desk, a quill hovering, yet all is interior. When the bell sounds none, monks file back through stone cloister lanes, gravel silent beneath their sandals. Each step considered, dignified. Late afternoon brings none, followed by optional work until twilight. Fields may be walked, manuscripts copied, gardens tended. Silence here speaks in the sounds of nature. Breeze through trees, water over troughs, the occasional bird call. Yet even these natural sounds are welcomed, because they are simple, not dominant. Loud human voices would disturb the fragile peace. And so work continues without chatter. Instead, thoughts drift, prayer weaves between tasks. As day wanes into evening, Vespers approaches about 6 p.m., the bell rings again, slow and calm, and the monks gather in choir stalls. Candles are lit around the chapel, their flickering soft against stone walls. Hymns begin in choral chant, psalms drawn to set the day's tone for darkness and rest. Soon words fill the vaulted space, but carried with restraint. Even the melody is unobtrusive, meant to wrap around the heart, not jar. Soon Vespers merge into a final short reading or prayer. When Vespers concludes, the community breaks to the final meal or spiritual reading in the refectory, after which comes compline before joining solitude in the dormitory. Compline is brief. Benedict emphasizes short, heartfelt prayer, ending at a sign. The voices are low, tiny, reverent. The chapel is dimming. One final petition for protection through the night, ending in silence once more. The psalms trace their arc downward, before sleep, before release into rest. Once compline ends, the great silence begins. No speech is allowed, no reading allowed, no gestures for conversation. Even sign language is not used here. The monastery settles into a hush. A candle burns through the night in the dormitory. Each monk slips under their habitual cloak, preparing to rest and rise again, perhaps within a few hours. Silence is both companion and teacher. It invites reflection, the slow unwinding of the mind's tension, the transition into dream. Within this silence, there is room for meditation and contemplation. Not every breath is empty. Instead, it carries memory, hope, awareness. The monk listens inwardly, to God, to conscience, to the quiet. Speech, when permitted at the council, in confession, or for teaching, is infused with this felt silence. It comes from that space, brief, intentional, meaningful. Even in times of illness or spiritual crisis, silence remains a reference point. If a monk is sick in the infirmary, others move softly in and out. Visits are brief, words carefully chosen or sometimes avoided. Abbot's counsel to a troubled soul may take form in a gentle gesture, a guiding sign, or a single whispered prayer. Silence does not abandon. It embraces, holds safe space. It is the boundary and the comfort. This ritual weave of silence and speech, of work and prayer, rides every element of monastic life. The liturgy's patterns are not merely schedules. They are spiritual architecture designed to shape the soul through interval and interlude, through words and their absence. In every chapel aisle, every cloister walk, silence offers the invitation. Be still, know that I am God. Over centuries, various orders took this tension even further. The Carthusians, for instance, opted for near total silence, rarely speaking beyond the chapel walls. They built hermitages into their cloister garden, each monk in solitude. Any exchange was strictly for necessity. The Cistercians, while keeping solitary cells, allowed some conversation at meals, but only using their sign lexicon. Such a sign was not the casual pantomime of entertainment. It was precise communication. Water, loaf, please, conveyed in one or two gestures. These signs were studied. The earliest Benedictine sign books, from Cluny in the late 11th century, cataloged signs for food, clothing, building names, ranks, even actions like kneel, stand, confess. Later, Cistercian manuals listed over 200 signs, each with meaning and form. The lexicon bore elegance, language without sound, visual yet reverent. They replaced unnecessary words with a single hand movement. They conveyed instructions in the scriptorium, permissions in the infirmary, needs at meals, all without violating the vow of silence. More than a convenience, it was a spiritual practice. Every gesture intentional, every movement prayer. The chapel's echo becomes a companion to their hands. When monks cannot speak, even their hands speak for them. The environment remains calm. No voice disturbs the patten's placement. No tone interrupts the reading of the lessons. Monastic silence is not the absence of life, but life softly lived. Within the chapel's architecture itself, silence is shaped. Stone vaults that amplify the chant, but also swallow disruptive noise. Narrow passageways slow steps. Timber doors creak quietly, if new. Regular care keeps them from squeaking. Roof slates lie flush. Even kitchens, separate from the cloister, are designed to muffle the clang of ladle and pan. All is tuned to avoid interruption. This curated silence is a communal symphony. Every action is an instrument played softly, stepping, breathing, turning a page, closing eyelids in prayer. Silence is not passive. It is active receptivity. Each monk's body learns the stillness. Each heartbeat marks the hush. Each inhalation is a note in the background chorus. At the heart of ritual life, the divine office is both anchor and release. Each hour finds them in chapel. Structured chanting, psalm recitation, scripture reading. Every word deliberate, every pause intentional. There is no urgency, no embellishment. In these hours, the monks practice interior stillness. Benedict reminds them, prayer should be made with heartfelt compunction rather than many words. It should be prolonged only under divine grace. By the time Compline ends and great silence begins, the monastery has lived its day through defined spaces of sound and silence. The wheel turns and the night settles. Sleep arrives like a prayer unspoken, an acknowledgement that human words have run their course for now. In that hush, the monastery becomes a vessel. Worn stone, weathered wood, the gentle presence of centuries all hold this silence. The monastic day is complete not in accomplishments, but in the quality of being. In silence, the monks come before themselves, before each other, before God. And as you rest beside this story, feeling the weight of your own quiet, you share that ancient rhythm. No hurry, no questions, only breath, only stillness. In the lingering hush of ritual life, the monastery invites you to follow its path toward calm and serene repose. You step quietly into the gentle hush of the morning cloister, where soft light blooms over worn stone. In this tender silence, words sleep behind closed lips, but communication still softly dances. Here, in monastic life, silence is not absence. It is a canvas, and upon it, monks paint messages with hands and eyes, balanced between discipline and compassion. Imagine a Benedictine monk, pale dawn on his hood, holding up two fingers pressed gently together upon his brow. This is the sign of the abbot, an unspoken acknowledgement of authority and order. No formal summons, no tapping of staff, just that small, graceful gesture. It carries weight without disturbing the sanctity of quiet. In Cluny and Hirsau, in the 11th century, lists of these signs were treasured, even copied into manuscripts. Hundreds appear some simple, others intricate, but each deeply practical. There were signs for bread and water, robes and sandals, church and chapter house. One sign, made by joining thumb and forefinger into a circle, spoke of bread. Another, gentle motion across the throat, meant enough. These signs were never frivolous. They always tended toward need or necessity, each part of a living lexicon rooted in humility rather than flourish. The monks developed this lexicon not as entertainment, but as necessity, shaped by the rule of St. Benedict. Let all things be done in decent order, including speech or its absence. Words were to be rarely spoken, and thoughtfully so. In much talk, thou shalt not escape sin. Silence was the guard. Gestures were the quiet diplomats who carried meaning forward. As you wander down the corridor, you see two monks in soft conversation, though no sound emerges. One holds his hand up, the thumb pressed to his lips, calling for silence. At his wrist, he taps an imaginary watch, asking, without sound, if it is time for choir. The other raises a single finger, palm inward, to request permission. Their communication is precise, almost reverent a dance of necessity, avoiding the clutter of idle speech. This gestural language was carefully structured. Most signs were iconic. They looked like what they meant. For a candlestick, a monk would blow gently upon his forefinger, then cup both hands as if holding a stick. To ask for a Bible, he would brush his cheek, thumb raised, as though touching the page of a sacred book. These gestures linked the physical world to the spiritual, reminding each monk, even in need, that all was sacred. Vocabulary grew. Medieval sign books from Benedictine houses list between 52 and 472 signs, averaging about 145. They covered everyday necessities: food, bowl, candle, sleeper, monk, refectory, dormitory. Grammar was left to the spoken tongue Latin or the local vernacular. The signs formed words, but sentences remained silent and unspoken. Picture the scriptorium. A fragrance of ink blends in the chill air. A monk's quill pauses above parchment. He gestures. Two fingers brush his hair sign for abbot. Silence falls deeper as another nods in reply. No scratch of the quill interrupts the hush, yet the instruction is understood. Virtue grows in this silent concert. Not all orders chose equal restraint. Cistercians and Carthusians adopted their own sign systems. Cistercians especially favored deeper quiet embracing, up to 472 recorded signs. Carthusians, in their solitary cells, rarely even gestured. They preserved silence as a near absolute state, with speech only in chapel or in dire necessity. Still, despite such strictness, kindness found its way. Compassionate speech, though rare, was allowed and sometimes essential. The rule itself carves exceptions: to instruct, to console, to care for guests or the ailing. At bedside, a monk caring for an infirm brother might bend low, whisper a soothing blessing, Dominus tecum, or the Lord be with you. This fragment of sound, so tender, broke no covenant, but embodied it. Speech here is not noise, it is balm. Even in the dormitory, where silence ruled after Compline, an abbot could speak a single word, a prayer, a warning, a comforting benediction. From Compline through the night, no other voice should sound, but for guests or for the abbot's purpose, exceptions were carved. These were not lapses, they were threads of mercy woven through quiet. Perhaps an old monk, late at night, visits a novice struggling with fever. His voice, low and calm, names a prayer. The novice breathes easier. No clamor, no echo, just that single phrase. The rule allows it, and the community understands. True silence is not cruelty, but the careful tendering of speech where it heals. And so, within those ancient walls, sign and speech were twin currents, flowing with purpose. A monk needing to see the infirmarian would gesture a hand, brought to the wrist, then walk softly to his presence. The infirmarian might respond, a nod, a step forward, and in hushed words he offers comfort, advice, perhaps a prayer. The uttered word becomes a gift, conscious and deliberate. Over time, monks realized that even signs could feel heavy if used carelessly. So, in the dormitory, even signs were often forbidden. In this final hush, nothing moved, not hands, not feet, not lips. Absolute stillness reigned, preparing each soul for rest or for the voice of God in dreams. Through this balance, a monastic ethos emerged. Words are gold, gestures are silver, silence is light itself. Each element shines in proportion, neither diminishing the other. Silence holds space for sign. Sign guards against waste. Speech, when released, glimmers as compassion. As you rest beneath the arches of memory, you feel the rhythm of this ancient balance settle around you. The language of signs and compassionate speech teaches us that communication need not be loud to be real. It can be gentle, mindful, and intentional. And in that gentleness, we find rest. Let this simplicity cradle your mind. Let the thought of silent monks and their careful hands lull you deeper. Soon, words will cease entirely, and silence will welcome you too. In the stillness of midday cloisters, where stone walls keep their own counsel, the quiet dance of hands persists. For some orders, such as the Cluniacs and Cistercians, these gestures were not occasional, but woven into the fabric of daily life. At Cluny, by the 11th century, monks had compiled over 100 signs for everyday needs: bread, water, garments, liturgical items. This silent lexicon, known as monasterials indicia, later expanded to lists of 120, 198, even hundreds of gestures across England and France. Imagine the patience required, each hand movement shaped to carry precise meaning, learned and practiced in quiet conversation. Yet within this spectrum of silence, exceptions emerged. Imagine a young chronicler, perhaps from Canterbury, stepping into the Cistercian refectory. He sees hands clasped, palms cupped, bringing motion and meaning without utterance. But at a sudden bell, a monk falls ill. In that moment, the rule bends. A voice is given soft, low to summon the infirmarian. It is necessity that permits speech here. Compassionate, caring, not careless whisper. The rule of Saint Benedict instructs that speech must be humble for instruction or necessity. It is never idle, but always intentional, a ripple on still water. Such speech is safeguarded by context. In the parlor adjacent to the cloister, visitors may speak. Instructors address novices. Confession demands gentle words. Within the dormitory, after Compline, absolute stillness reigns. Even gestures are restrained. Yet if a brother coughs or a fever rises, a hand may motion, and a whisper follows. Then the dormitory sighs deeper into quiet once more. Carthusians, known for the emptiest cloisters, forbade even signs in individual cells. But when a monk arises to pray, he walks. When he needs guidance, he seeks the prior. When he enters the chapel, he kneels. The body speaks when the tongue cannot, but always within the sacred canopy of intention. In such an environment, speech became rare, precious, a small boat carrying great care. The infirmary's whispered reassurance, the abbot's soft blessing, the confessor's compassionate counsel. Each is a ray of warmth in the cool hush. These were not departures from silence. They were its highest expression, the reward for living it well. And so, within the monastic cradle of signs, one senses not deprivation, but refinement. A system so rich that monks once joked it resembled an Italian street performance. Not mockery, but marvel at its expressiveness. Hands paintings in the air, drawing meaning where words might have been loud. Yet always disciplined. In the dormitory, gestures were forbidden. In the chapter house, speech was minimal. Across orders and generations, a single principle endured. Communication must not distract from the interior life. This interior life thrived in silence. But what about the rare moments of speech? They were blessed and weighty. Picture a novice, tormented by doubt, pausing after Vespers. The abbot kneels beside him, resting a weathered hand upon the young man's sleeve. A single phrase, Fides tua te salvavit. That phrase carries centuries of prayer in its softness. It renews the novice's spirit with no fanfare. The words fade into the night, but their impact lingers, more lasting than pages of spoken counsel. Then there is the visitor, a poor pilgrim at the gate. In the outer parlor, the monk welcomes him. Speech flows more freely. But even here, the tone is gentle, measured, humble. A compassionate exchange. You have walked far. Rest and eat. Shelter and solace shared in a few words. And when the pilgrim retreats within the walls, silence returns like a closing door. Within these walls, communication becomes as much an art as prayer. A sign for bread thumb and forefinger joined echoes the form of a small loaf. To request water, a finger to lips, then wrist. To indicate the abbot, 2 fingers raised to the brow. These gestures are neither crude nor theatrical. They are quietly poetic, linking body, need, and sacred space without voice. The medieval manuals went further. The monasterials indicia, compiled at Canterbury in the 11th century, recorded 127 signs. In some houses, like Bury St. Edmunds, nearly 200 distinct signs existed. In Portuguese Cistercian houses, around 472 were recorded, yet none claimed to form a complete language. Rather, they were a lexicon. Nouns, simple verbs, sit, stand, confess. Sentences were shaped by Latin grammar. Gestures served as silent nouns. And while friars and later deaf communities used fully developed finger alphabets, monks remained content with iconic clarity. This gap between sign and speech felt purposeful. Hand gestures remain bodies in motion. Speech is air and vibration. Sign could reach across the refectory. Speech could disturb the sanctuary, so speech was spared for necessity or mercy, instructing novices with humility, consoling the sorrowful, guiding the confused. Each phrase was uttered with reverence, mindful of the sanctity it inhabited. Over time, this discipline shaped character. In modern Cistercian houses, 3 types of speech are permitted: functional work communication, spiritual exchange with superiors, and occasional spontaneous conversation. Even now, speech is woven into an atmosphere of prayerful quiet. The devotion, the humility, remains. Meditate on the beauty of such restraint. Speech is given, but sparingly. Signs are expressive, yet controlled. Silence is ever at the center, and it is alive. In the shifting light of cloisters, in the cadence of canonical hours, in the breath of each monk. In your own mind, let this quiet inspiration settle deeper. As the fingers folded, the whispered comfort, the gentle order all underscored a profound truth. Communication need not be loud to be real. It need only be intentional. Each element sign, silence, speech served the inner life. Soon, as your own world dims around you, allow these ancient lessons to become a soft guide. No need to speak, no need to gesture. Just rest. Let silence cradle your thoughts. Let the rhythms of distant refrains carry you further into calm. And when speech drifts away from your mind like leaves on water, know that you have touched something timeless. A monastery of the heart, where silence speaks the deepest truths. Let go now. Sink beneath the surface. The chapter closes, but its hush carries onward into your dreams, into night's embrace. Imagine yourself in the soft gray light of dawn, the cloistered garden cloaked in dew. You walk slowly along moss-soft paths, your steps cushioned by centuries of quiet. In the hush between night and day, guiltless birds lift their wings in slow awakening. You pause by a sturdy stone bench and settle onto it. The stones cool at first, then gentle as they absorb the warmth of your body. You take a deep, quiet breath in rhythm with the world just waking around you, and prepare yourself for a different kind of silence. It is a silence not merely of absence, but of attentiveness, a stillness held in the heart. It is here that the ancient practice of Lectio Divina begins, a sacred reading in slow motion, inviting mind and soul into communion with words that breathe. You open an aged manuscript parchment, slightly wavering under your fingertips. On its surface are soft Latin letters, a gospel passage chosen for contemplation. Perhaps today it is Pax Vobis, peace be with you. You glance at the words once. The letters are quiet. You breathe them in. Then, with gentle care, you read again. Not aloud, but in the hushed cadence of breath. Each syllable lands with space. Lectio, meditatio, oratio, contemplatio, all 4 steps moving like water through stone. In the first reading, you simply listen, letting the words enter you. In the second, you linger on a single phrase, peace be with you, and allow it to settle like a feather on your heart. In this moment, the boundary between text and you softens. Monks in medieval times understood this carefully. Their note-taking was slow. They would read, close their eyes, and let the words bloom inwardly, feeling perhaps a memory, an echo, a warmth that the words stirred, something like what David Benner describes as chewing on the word, where meditatio releases the meaning not as concept, but as quiet presence. You sense that here, reading is prayer every thought, every pause, a step deeper into the stillness. Around you, the garden breathes. A fountain at its center murmurs without demand. A single dew-heavy leaf drips into the basin. You breathe slowly. With each exhalation, your mind settles more. In the silence beyond words, you begin to pray not with sentences, but with simple attention. Your heart responds, an oratio built of stillness. It is not pleading, not praising. It is simply gratitude, soft and wordless. You offer the peace in your heart back to the one from whom it flows. Finally, you rest there in contemplation. No intention to answer, no need to understand, just quiet. The moment when speech has faded and only presence remains. That is contemplatio, the final movement of Lectio Divina, the gift of stillness itself. In centuries past, monks like Guigo II of the Grande Chartreuse called this the ladder's summit. First read, then ponder, then pray, and rest in God's presence. Here, in this unspoken resting place, the heart learns a new pace, the pace of eternity, of Hesychia. Hesychia, a Greek word meaning quiet, calm stillness. It was born in eastern deserts, shaped by hermits on holy hills, where prayer became the rhythm of breath and heartbeat. In the Hesychist tradition, monks whispered the Jesus prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, over and over, until the breath itself became prayer. The name means more than silence. It means the hush deep in the soul, the gentle center where nothing shakes you. It is a stillness that flows through centuries into a place within you now, where there is no audience, no demand, just the glow of presence. In time, these two streams Lectio Divina in the West, Hesychasm in the East run parallel, each leading seekers to the same hidden heart of all things. In the West, Benedictines and Cistercians held sacred the reading of Scripture, sung in choir, then private, then communal. Saints like Bernard of Clairvaux spoke of Scripture as living flame. In the East, fathers of Mount Athos clung to the Jesus prayer, sometimes for hours, sometimes their whole lives, letting the prayer and the breath shape them like softened wax. Their goal, to reach Hesychia, to dwell in silent watchfulness in the heart of being. Picture then a lone monk in a small cell, a humble stone room, a wooden bench, a single narrow window. He sits, lamp dimmed, parchment folded aside. The hush is so complete that even his breathing seems loud until he remembers. I do not breathe. Breath breathes me. Then he bows his head to the rhythm of his own life, or perhaps to the whisper of the Jesus prayer. Inhaling slowly, exhaling, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. Over and again, until breath, prayer, and silence become one. Around him, centuries of monastic stillness breathe through the mortar in the walls. Sometimes, Lectio Divina and Hesychia meet. A monk rises at midnight, reads a brief psalm perhaps, Be still and know that I am God. He sets the book aside and simply sits. He feels breathing in his chest, in his belly, as steady as the tide. The words still resonate in the dark. He does not need to revisit them. Instead, he closes his eyes, listening. The stillness within is his sanctuary. He knows that the words were never his to begin with. They are doors, The real dwelling is here, in the silence of the heart. Through the slow unfolding of these practices, monks discovered that silence is not absence of sound, but that which makes sound possible. Without silence, no bird song, no scripture's echo. Silence is the womb of waiting, the cradle of peace. Hesychia becomes a lamp in the soul, guiding through days of work and nights of prayer. It turns the ordinary into sacred. Washing dishes, tending hearth, all become quiet prayers if done in stillness. You remain on your stone bench, eyes closed now. The garden is far away, but its peace is within you. You feel the echo of ancient words as soft vibrations in your chest. Peace be with you. You breathe. You rest. No expectation, just presence. You don't know how long you've been here. You don't need to. Hesychia dissolves time. You are beyond sunrise, beyond winding paths. You are here still, gentle, open. And as you sit, you remember gentle gestures you learned earlier, the sign language of silence. Now they come in stillness of heart, the bow, the folded hands, the humble nod, all inner. The heart bows, the soul opens without sound. This silence is not absence, it is fullness. Silence of the heart holds all that needs holding. It knows the weight of longing and lets it lie down. It knows the shape of wonder. It does not demand an answer. In these silent hours, the boundary between reader and text, between seeker and sacred, dissolves. You and the ancient monk are one in stillness. The manuscript lies open, its words now echoes in your bones. The garden beyond the window breathes in your breath. Hesychia surrounds you like soundless light. The ladder of Lectio Divina rests gently beneath your being. There is no doing now, only being. You are held. When you feel the weight of sleep descend, it will come softly like dusk slipping into night. Each heartbeat tumbles you farther from speech, from thought, from striving. Here, in this chamber of silence, you can drift without fear. The word has spoken already in breath. The heart has heard. Now rest. In the next hour, the echo of ancient prayer will carry you, like a lullaby from stone. Hesychia will cradle your breaths, and Lectio Divina will whisper soft in dreams. They will guide you not with tales or tension, but with quiet grace. Let this peace follow you down the gentle slope of sleep until you are wrapped in soft darkness. The monastery's lamp may be dimmed for the night. The manuscript lies still. You have done nothing remarkable, only sat, only listened, only let. That is enough. Suffices to carry you beyond wakefulness. Let the silence speak for the rest. And so, dear friend, we return slowly to the quiet of your own bed. You've walked centuries of silent corridors, felt the hush of candlelit cells, witnessed monastic hands speaking without sound. Let that stillness settle within your mind. As the final embers of our story dim, feel the cloak of silence enfolding you. Let the monastery's hush guide your thoughts toward rest. Imagine the last light extinguished in the scriptorium, leaving only soft moonlight on parchment. Imagine the bell's distant echo across cloister walls. Breathe slowly in and out. With each breath, sink deeper into comfort. May the memory of soft gestures, of silence as something alive, accompany your dreams. Feel gratitude for this journey not hurried, but unfolding in its own time. When the first gentle light of morning arrives, when your sleep loosens its hold, then you may carry this quiet with you. But for now, sleep. Good night, dear traveler. May your rest be deep, peaceful, and cradled by centuries of monastic calm.